Hi class. I'm going to go ahead and go over a few of the homework questions since I can't be here with you today due to a doctor's appointment. So if you could look at numbers 1 through 6. In triangle SDU, UJ is going to be 9. That's already labeled in our picture. VJ is 3. And ZT is going to be 18. So that's going to be that whole segment. We need to find all the rest of these measures. I know that these are medians because they're going from an angle to the midpoint of the opposite side. So if all three of these are medians, then the point where they meet J is going to be that centroid. So remember, the centroid has that 2/3 property. So whenever you're looking at a median and a centroid, let's say we have A, B here, this is a median, and the centroid would be point C. A to C would be 2/3 of the distance, and C to B would be 1/3 of the distance. So AC is 2/3 of AB, CB is going to be 1/3 of AB, and then the relationship between these two is that 1/3 is half of 2/3. Or you can multiply by 2 to go from 1/3 to 2/3. So YJ, our segment here, is going to be that 1/3 piece from our median. So I'm going to write that by YJ. This is the 1/3 piece. I know the 2/3 piece is 9, so half of 9 would be 4.5. So again, the relationship between the big to the small is that the small is going to be half of the bigger segment. So YJ is 4.5. SJ is going to be that 2/3 piece because it's longer than JB, which is the 1/3 piece. So if the 1/3 piece is 3, then SJ would have to be 6. YU would be 4.5 plus 9, which gives me 13.5. SV would be 6 plus 3, which is 9. JT is going to be 1/3 of 18. So 1/3 of 18 is 6. And then ZJ, if this segment is 6, we know that the 2/3 piece is twice as big. So that will make ZJ 12. All right, next I want you to look at number 11 because it's using the same thing. Here we know that we have medians because it tells you that J, P, and L are all midpoints of the sides. So one median would be MJ, the next one is HL, and the last median is KP. So the point where they meet Q is going to be that centroid. So looking at our ones that have X, I know that KQ is equal to 7 and that QP is equal to 2x minus 6. So KQ is going to be that 2/3 piece and QP will be that 1/3 piece. And I know that QP has to be half as big as KQ. So that means that QP is going to equal 3.5. So if I know QP is 3.5 and I know it's 2x minus 6, I can set those equal. Add 6 to both sides. So 2x is equal to 9.5. Divide by 2 on both sides, and you will get that x is equal to 4.75. Okay, to find y, I know that LQ is equal to 3 and that QH is equal to Y. So QH is going to be the 2/3 piece, LQ is the 1/3 piece. So QH has to be twice as big as LQ, which means that QH is going to equal 6. So that means that Y is equal to 6. The final one we're going to find is Z. So JQ is equal to 2Z. QM is equal to 4. I know QM is the 2/3 piece. JQ is the 1/3 piece. So JQ has to be half as big as QM. So that means that JQ is equal to 2. I set up my equation, 2Z is equal to 2, and you will get that Z is equal to 1. Okay, next question I'm going to go over is going to be number 15. In 15, EC is an altitude. That means it's going to go from an angle and be perpendicular to the opposite side. So these will both be right angles. The measure of angle 1 is given and the measure of angle 2 is given, and we need to find the measures of those angles. Well, I know that angle 1 plus angle 2 equals 90. So the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 is equal to 90. So let's plug in those values. 2x plus 7 plus 3x plus 13 is equal to 90. So that's 5x plus 20 is equal to 90. Subtract 20 from both sides to get 5x is equal to 70. And then you'll get that x is equal to 14. Now to find the measure of each angle, we're going to plug in our x value. So for the measure of angle 1, it's going to be 2 times 14 plus 7, which is going to give me 35 degrees. For the measure of angle 2, that's going to be 3 times 14 plus 13, which gives me 55 degrees. Okay, number 16. Number 16 uses the same picture. So if you wrote on your picture, you need to erase it or you need to redraw that triangle. Because now we're doing a new problem. Find the value of x if AC is equal to 4x minus 3, DC is equal to 2x plus 9, and the measure of angle ECA, so this angle, is going to be 15x plus 2. And EC is the median, so that's shown here that these two segments are congruent since that EC is a median, goes to the midpoint. Is EC also an altitude? So let's first find x, then we'll talk about if EC is also an altitude for number 16. So I'm going to set 4x minus 3 equal to 2x plus 9. You will get 2x is equal to 12, and x is equal to 6. Now, to determine if EC is also an altitude, that would have to mean that this angle that we have labeled would have to equal 90 degrees for EC to be an altitude. So if we plug in our x value, 15 times 6 plus 2, for that angle, you're going to get 90 plus 2, which is 92 degrees. So is EC an altitude? No, because it is over 90 degrees. Okay, next problems are 17 through 20. For number 17, we know that LM is perpendicular to JK. So is this a perpendicular bisector? No, because we only know it's perpendicular, we don't know it bisects. Is it a median? No, it doesn't show that it's going to the midpoint. Is it an altitude? Yes, because it goes from an angle and it's perpendicular to the opposite side. Okay. For the next one, I'm going to redraw this triangle. So this is going to be for number 18. We know that these two triangles are congruent, so that means that all of the corresponding parts are going to be congruent. Those two angles are congruent, these two angles are congruent. And then, since these two angles form a line and they're congruent, that means they're both 90 degrees. So in number 18, LM, which is this segment, is actually going to be all three of the different segments. It's a perpendicular bisector. It's going to be a median because it's going to the midpoint. And it's also going to be an altitude because it's perpendicular. So it's going to be all three. All right, for number 19, all we know is that JM is congruent to MK. So it's going to the midpoint of that bottom side, which would make it a median. All right, the last one, we know that LM is perpendicular to JK, so those would be right angles, and JL is congruent to KL. So on this one, we know for sure that it is an altitude. If you were to mark the reflexive property in this triangle from last chapter, you could also say that these triangles are congruent by HL, because you have the hypotenuse congruent, the leg congruent, and you have that right angle. So that's also going to mean that these two segments are congruent. So this ends up also being a perpendicular bisector. And then since the triangles are congruent, we know that these two top angles are congruent, which makes it an angle bisector, even though that's not an option. And this is also a median because it's going to the midpoint of the opposite side. Okay, 21 and 22 use the same picture. In triangle JLP, JMP is going to be 3x minus 6. JK is 3y minus 2. And LK is 5y minus 8. If JM is an altitude, that means that it would create right angles on that side. So we're going to find x by setting 3x minus 6 equal to 90. So that would be 3x is equal to 96. Then divide by 3 to get x is equal to 32. Find LK if PK is a median. If PK is a median, then it's going to the midpoint of this opposite side. So that means you would set 3y minus 2 equal to 5y minus 8. So you would get 2y is equal to 6, and then y is equal to 3. To find LK, you would plug into both of those expressions. So this would be 9 minus 2, which is 7. This would be 15 minus 8, which is 7. So LK is going to equal 14. These are the questions that would be similar to something that you would be tested over on this chapter. I will go over these other questions with you next class. I also promise that I will be in class with you next class. I sincerely apologize that I couldn't be there today. I really wanted to. Your test scores are online, so you can check those, and you will certainly see those whenever I see you guys next week. So thank you. Please be good for the substitute. I appreciate your guys' patience, and again, I'm sorry that I couldn't be there.